Hello and welcome to Chapter 10. Here we're going to talk about developing the IEP with families. This is our first introduction to this. I just have a couple of ideas here for you, a few points. The first idea, the requirements from IDEA. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk also a little bit about the main points that I had in communicating with parents about IEPs, and we'll finish up with the module activities. The first note to you, by the way, this will be a very short podcast. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to this lesson. The first idea on the requirements for IDEA, and this is Part B, we will not talk about Part C, the IFSP. However, it is important that you do pay a little bit of attention to that, especially if you're going to be working with children of that age. But the first things that I wanted to mention about Part B are that to document the parent participation, document. Keep copies of any correspondences, records of calls, meetings, anything like that. So you want to make sure that if you have a phone conference with a parent or guardian, that you are keeping a phone log. When I taught, I always had a phone log. Even though phone has become a little bit outmoded, it was always nice to have, especially when I started to talk with my principal about issues that I had with different children or parents. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is that there are at least 6 people that need to be at the conference, and number 1 amongst those are the students' parents. So you'll see the other individuals are there. We also may have the child, depending upon the age, their level of comfortability in that situation. However, the parents are the number 1 participant in the IEP meeting. At the IEP meeting, we'll be looking at the student's strengths and the parents' concerns. Notice this isn't the student's weaknesses and the parents' strengths of the child. This is actually what we believe as the professional educator to be the strengths of the child and the concerns that are coming from the parent. The student's performance on the pre-referral interventions. So this, and the third point as well, talks about this state or district assessments. So these performance aspects are also very important. The present level of achievement and functioning, however that might be measured, would be something that you would bring with you to the IEP meeting. Several other ideas, including the extent to which the student will not be in the general education setting, because remember, the law states that the student must be in the least restrictive environment. So if you are not putting the child into the general education establishment, note of that must be made along with the reasons for that. Included with this are any accommodations to measure achievement if the child might be moving on to alternative forms of assessment. Evidence of that will need to be provided as well. And finally, especially with the older children, the transition plan. As we know, children must be notified by the time that they're 16 that they will start to be in charge of their transition plan. They'll be included. You'll start to create that transition plan at 16. At age 17, they begin to really make that choice if they are going to be taking care of that, or if that discussion as well can be had with the parents if they are fully aware of their choices and what they can do for their transitions. And so you also want to discuss this with the parents, but typically by age 18 is when the child will be in control of their own destiny, if you will. So a couple pieces as we move on to the actual IEP conference itself. I just wanted to mention 2 or 3 here. Number 1 is to prepare in advance. This goes without saying, but this is the number 1 idea. Designate the service coordinator, designate the individuals who are going to be reading the statistics and the assessments. Potentially the school psychologist would be involved here. Make sure all invitations are sent out. Make sure that you have had lots of informative meetings with the parents and other stakeholders before the actual IEP meeting. Because as we have noted in the research, is that the biggest problem with IEP meetings is the amount of time or lack thereof in the meeting. So we want to make sure that there's a lot of information exchanged prior to the meeting. I would also caution, because the research cautions us not to prepare the full IEP and just have the parents sign it when you do actually physically sit down to meet with them. Really set the stage here for trust and partnership, and understand that you may have to meet with the parent at a later date, or some other notion like that in order to actually get that official signature, because it is very important that the parent does have full participation in the IEP meeting, and that may mean not drawing up the IEP until after the meeting. Connect with the parents and students, and then start. Attend especially to the partnership principle of communication. The book has talked about this time and time again, and so have I. The idea of communication and how important it is to develop that win-win communication idea as far as creating partnerships. Trust is the number one issue at the very beginning. So when you first meet with a parent, ask questions, develop connections. Find out what they like in their community and what you like in their community, and make that connection. Talk about the child, talk about the school, whatever it might be, but definitely ask questions. This helps with everything that we've been talking about as far as developing trust, communication. These principles will help take this IEP meeting to a whole new level. The third point that I wanted to talk about is the idea of developing a map. And here this is how parents, this is Turnbull's suggestion and my suggestion for creating a shared vision. So understanding that when you are developing the IEP, you may not be writing down these things as to how the child will develop their sense of independent living, how they will be a full participant in society, get a job, that kind of thing. However, these are the principles that undergird our thought process and why we are developing the IEPs and why we are meeting with the parents and children and going through the time and the process it takes in order to create an excellent IEP and developing these partnerships with the family. So I would highly recommend the reading on the map 264, and also I really highly recommend the reading on the individual who talks about their map making process on 265. So to wrap up here, very important that we know ourselves. We don't just hypothetically think that we know ourselves, but we actually take the time to listen to ourselves. And so chapter 9, there's although it wasn't required reading, there is a really short trust questionnaire. You don't have to turn it in. I just really recommend going through it piece by piece and asking yourself these questions, because as you go into chapter 10, we understand that developing trust is one of the most important things with the IEP meeting. Even though we don't have a lot of time, it is important that we leave that meeting on shared ground with the parents, of course. The second activity for this chapter is collaborating with parents, a graphic organizer. I'd like you to be a little bit creative in creating a concept map or hierarchical note-taking, however it is that you want to do it, but some sort of graphic organizer that relates the information on pages 258, 259 in figure 10.3, because there's a lot of information there. I feel it's important for us to synthesize that information and to kind of summarize some of its main points. And you'll turn that in via Canvas. The third point is a short quiz. It's only about 5 questions, not many points, and it is timed. However, it does cover the main objectives that I had for this lesson. So hope that helps answer some questions, and also hope that also helps start some other questions that you may have. Look forward to that as well, and it's been a great ride so far, and look forward to finishing up these final modules as we continue on. Look forward to the next podcast, in which we'll detail the final couple of chapters and also discuss the final project.